Welcome to the Birth of a Mama podcast, a place where mothers can share their real life stories because every experience is real, every experience is valid. So let's talk about it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Birth of a Mama podcast. Today on the show, I have Jackie Fox. Jackie, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be so fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you're here. Let's have you start off by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and your family.
All right, so my name is Jackie. I am a new mom. I have a beautiful daughter, Winnie. She is 1 year old. Um, we kind of met you and I kind of met online. I do online fitness. I'm a health and fitness coach on there, and I do that part time and full time. I do high school biology. I'm a teacher there, and I just really love talking to other moms about all of this stuff because I feel like I was a little unprepared for the whole thing, and I just love connecting with other women about that and yeah, sharing my story.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you're a teacher because, man, we kind of talked a little bit before we started recording, but teachers are doing the real work out there in the world and don't get
Oh,
enough credit. So thank you for what you do.
thank you. Oh, of course. It's a fun job, but it's a little nuts, especially as a mom. So I'm
Yeah, yeah.
excited to talk about that a little bit too.
You're like a double mom. You have your family at school and then your family at
Oh
home,
yeah.
right?
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's also start with you having you tell the listeners if you had to describe your transition into motherhood in 3 words, which words would you choose? And you can explain why if you want.
My 3 words. I've been thinking about this all day. My 3 words: humbled, blessed, and this third word I've been like toying with a few, but I think I'm gonna go with peace. Oh no, I was gonna say peaceful, but it's not peaceful. It's like an at peace with myself kind of word.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
haven't like thought of the vocab. My mom brain is like all over the place all the time.
Yeah.
But definitely like humbled. Yeah, a lot of it blessed and kind of at peace. And it's changed a lot over the course of the year, I will say. If you asked me this like last year at this time, it would have been surprised, stressed, um, and a few other not as great words. But
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. It's so much more than just 3 words, right? Like it's so hard to put it into 3 words. And I love that you point out, well, if you would have asked me this a little while ago, it would have been different because everything is constantly changing, right? In motherhood, especially like, I mean, obviously in life in general, but there's seasons to everything and they're always like hitting
yeah.
their next milestones and going through the next development and you're going through your own stuff and learning as well, and so yeah, that's a good point that it's
Oh,
always changing. Yeah.
completely agree. I feel like with every milestone they hit, you're also hitting one, especially as a new mom and everything too. So you're constantly learning and relearning everything about yourself. And, after a lot of work, I can definitely come to like a place where now I'm like very at peace with myself and like very blessed and humbled through like the last year of motherhood.
Yeah, I like that piece because it's not like, oh, everything's just so peaceful and blissful, but it's like you've come to this place of like I'm able to find the
Yes.
peace, which
Yes.
kind of comes from learning how to like let go and surrender. I feel like, which is a
Yes.
huge lesson in motherhood. Oh my gosh.
That's been a really, really hard thing too, especially because, and I'll talk about it a little bit later when we talk about things, but I definitely went through a really bad postpartum anxiety and had postpartum depression, and just being able to like now find a place where like I don't have to have control over this, and like I don't have to be up every hour checking on her breathing and everything. I can let go a little bit and I can trust my choices and my decisions and everything, which it took a long time to get there, but.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really those are all such valid points and I'm like sitting here nodding because I'm like, yep, I remember
Yes.
going through similar things. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, let's next have you talk about, like how did your pregnancy go and then did you prepare at all for postpartum, so after the arrival of the baby?
So pregnancy was, I wish I could say like it was one of those things where all that, you hear that you're like more in tune with your body and everything. I felt very much like a stranger in my body during pregnancy. It was a little confusing. There's this, rose colored glasses that I feel like a lot of moms talk about pregnancy, and I see it now. Now that I'm like not in it for the first time, I see like the good things about it. But at the moment, I was very like uncomfortable. I was always just like, what is that? What is that? Is that safe? Is that not safe? Can I do this? Can I not do this? So it was a lot of stress, I feel like, from the get go because they like, give you this huge packet of things you can't do. And all the books are like, you can't do this anymore. And it's a lot. And I feel like, being somebody with anxiety, I was always just kind of like, oh my gosh. So I think if I were to do it again, it would be a lot different knowing what I know now. But definitely was a little crazy at first. And I feel like I did prepare for postpartum, but I prepared for the best case scenario postpartum, which, you know, I didn't have. So I prepared for like, oh, I had a natural, unmedicated birth, and these are, those like frozen, like witch hazel and aloe things that I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
made so many of those, and I ended up having an emergency well, we'll get into all that, but like, I prepared that kind of way, but I feel like I didn't prepare enough for like if something did go wrong, which it kind of did.
Yeah.
So.
And you're not alone in that. Like, that's so common. And that's why I love asking this question is just to see, like where people's minds were at before the baby arrived. Like, were they even thinking about preparing? Because a lot of times there's no preparation, or you just decide you're going to wing it, or like you prepare, but for the best case scenario, like for what you want the outcome to be. And it's like, well, unfortunately, we don't have control of how it goes. But yeah, so you're not alone in that. That's very common, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, like you're not really told how to prepare postpartum. You're kind of told how to prepare for a baby. And those
100%.
are very different things. I've grown to realize that like you need to kind of prepare yourself for postpartum you and a baby. And
Yes.
I feel like a lot of times like the classes and the doctors don't really, and not it's not really like the doctor's job, I guess, but like they don't really prepare you for like postpartum you.
I mean, I feel like it is. Like, I feel like we are being failed with
Oh,
our healthcare system, Like, I feel like, because what about mom? I feel like that's kind of, well, that is like how
mhm.
this podcast was even kind of came to be, is because it's all about baby, but you're also being born,
Yes.
right? Like, you're also coming into motherhood. You're coming into this new identity, this new life. Everything about it is turned upside down from your normal like world that you're used to. You can no longer just go do anything you want to do. You can no longer just like, be the person that you were before, physically and emotionally and mentally, like in all of the ways. And yeah, I think that we are kind of failed with our healthcare system. Not that it should all, only be our doctor's responsibility or whatever, but that there should be something more built into the system, like more
Yes.
beyond just okay, you get one follow up after you give birth at 6 weeks postpartum. You're cleared for
Yes.
exercise and sex, and then you're sent on your way, and that's that. And you're screened with a little
Oh my
questionnaire, and oh, you're good. Okay, see you later. Like, have a good
I could
life.
I could write a whole novel about how there's
Yeah.
not enough care for like postpartum you. But I feel like at the hospital, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that they should have a doctor who's not a mother baby or, whatever doctor come in and talk to you and be like, this is how recovery is probably realistically going to go. Here are some things that could help. Here's the best way to recover. Instead of like, let's get up, like let's keep moving, you gotta do that. And it's, you're just kind of like, I don't, this is my first rodeo, like I've never done this before. I don't know how to recover
Yeah.
correctly. And I
Yeah.
think like it's scary sometimes too, because then we're also in this age where we have, I think, too much information at our hands that you look something up and you're like, oh my God, like this is the end for me because I had like this one random symptom that Sally Sue also had online and she had to be, like hospitalized for it. And you're just not like realistically told how your healing is going to go.
I love that. I love having somebody. And I mean, I guess like postpartum doulas, or, technically
Yeah.
they're not like medical
Hmm.
people, but they can kind of come and support you in that way and talk to you through things, which is amazing, and they're great, but they're not it's like not part of care, right? That's like something you have to go out of your way to hire them. It's expensive. That
Hmm.
not everyone can afford that. So it's kind of this luxury thing. And I
Right.
love having like your idea of having that built in, like they come into your room afterwards and it's part of the process. They come in and they talk to you about what to
Yes.
expect, what's normal, what's not, what to look out for, because they kind of do that, but it's on a piece of paper. Like they give you all this paperwork when you leave, and it's like, oh yeah, because I totally have time to do that now. Don't worry about the fact that I haven't slept in 2 days. Now let me just go ahead and do a bunch of homework. Like,
Yeah.
what? Yeah,
It's nuts to me. And like
yeah,
I ended up having postpartum or post-eclampsia, which I
mm-hmm.
knew nothing about. I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen until it did
Yeah,
happen. And I just remember being there being like, what do I do? And they were like, just go home. And I'm like, what? Like, I just go home. And of course, that's when I, went to the internet and looked up way too much information on it. And I was like, I just remember specifically like I want to say like third night home when like my blood pressure wasn't going down. And not that like it realistically would have in 3 days, but I just remember crying to my husband being like, what if I die? Like I was so afraid of that. And they just don't tell you anything. And like you look online and you're like, oh, this is high blood pressure after birth can lead to a heart attack, which is, and I was just, and of course, like 3 days postpartum too, you're just full of every emotion on the planet and like
yeah,
the crashing of everything. And I just remember being like, I don't even know what's happening. I don't know what's happening to me. And I just wish somebody had kind of like sat me down and had been like, this is normal. This happens to so many women. You're on this medication for it, and like things are going to be okay. It's realistically going to take like 2 weeks to kick in. You know, try and rest and try and do this. And, it was just kind of like, here's your medicine, goodbye. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, like,
Yeah, not adequate. Not adequate at all. Like, not even close. Because
no.
that is so scary. And there are serious complications. You can die. Women
Yeah.
have died
Oh,
from
yes.
postpartum
Yes.
preeclampsia. Like, it's not unheard of. So, yeah, you're valid in feeling that. And then, like you said, on top of it, you're already so emotional because you just went through the greatest hormone shift you'll ever experience in your life.
Oh,
And it's the one time you need so much support, and there's like zero built in.
none.
Zero.
It blows my
So,
mind. I
yeah.
I feel like that is something that needs to change 100% because it's like I know it is all about the baby, but like and over the year of, going through anxiety and like depression and everything with it, you can't help anybody if you're not helping yourself too. And if you don't have the tools or the know-how to help yourself, you're just kind of like out there on, without a life jacket sometimes and just kind of struggling to help everybody. And you're kind of just helping nobody at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It needs to change for sure. So hopefully we can be part. I mean, who knows
Yes.
if we'll see change in our lifetime, but we'll be the ones fighting for sure.
Yes. I hope so. That's actually why I go online and I am probably more open than I need to be about it, but I'm like, on social media, I feel like everyone is so sunshines and rainbows sometimes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm always here to talk to you, random person I met online. Like, if you are going through something, like, I get it. I'm here.
Yeah.
And like, it is a wonderful experience, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand the distinction that it is hard, but it is amazing too. And like, if you're not always talking about the good, you're deemed a horrible mother. And I'm like,
Right.
no, it's really hard. Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's, you can hold those two seemingly opposing and like dichotomous
yes.
emotions at the same time. I think it's hard for some people to understand that, or like you said, they view that really negatively, or like you're just being a negative Nancy, or you're just like so pessimistic, and oh, like, you're playing the victim or whatever. But it's like
Yeah.
everyone's story is real and valid, and this shit is hard, like, and it's okay to acknowledge that. I think we should acknowledge that so that others that are going through things that are hard, like
Mhm.
motherhood, especially for the
Yes.
first time, maybe they're alone and they don't have a whole lot of other people who have been through something like this. They go on social media and they see all these women just killing it with their clean homes and their cute outfits and their hair done, and their kids are just like little angels, and they're like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? You know?
Oh,
So trying to
100%.
change that, like change that script,
Same
you
here. That
know?
was me. And
Yeah.
it was, I just remember feeling like such a failure all the time. And I was like, why is nobody online being like, hey, my house is a mess. Like my kid is screaming and they also just fell and like bumped their head into this. Like they're okay, but this is real
Yeah.
life. Like my counters are sticky. My laundry folded pile, which it's awesome that it even got folded, has been sitting in the corner for like a week, like
Yeah.
it's hard and it's harder when you think you're doing a bad job doing stuff like that because social media is like, all these stay-at-home moms are like, you know, somehow making millions of dollars doing whatever, whatever, and like having the cleanest house and the happiest kids and the cleanest kids. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, what am I
Yeah.
doing?
Right. Because there's obviously something going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing. They're not
Yes.
sharing the times when it is hard. They're not sharing the fact that they probably have a house cleaner and they probably have a nanny and they probably have someone who grocery shops for them or they use Instacart or
Yes.
whatever, like there's things happening that we're not seeing. And so then we play this comparison game of,
Hmm.
oh, I'm over here doing it all alone and I don't look anything like her and her beautiful home and her beautiful self. Like, what's wrong with me? Yeah.
Yes,
It's so real. Yeah.
it is so real. And I feel like so my best friend and I had our babies like 26 days apart. And
Oh,
she has a very
nice.
different career than mine. She is a nurse and like works crazy hours and stuff, but she has like such a different schedule than mine. And she, I think, like works 3 or 4 days a week, so she gets a little bit more days off than I do. And I just remember going to her house, after like the first few months and being like, "How is your house so clean? How are you doing this?" Like, I feel like I'm at work and I come home and like I have nothing left to do to clean my house. And she's like, "We don't have the same jobs." She's like, "You're a teacher. You bring home a lot of baggage." And she's like, "You got to do all these things." She's like, "I have these days off." Like, and just to remember that no matter what, like you don't know what everybody else's story is. And, some people have better things going on and some people have other, like, there's always a strength and a weakness to everything. Because I remember her too being like, "I'm so jealous that you get breaks because I have to work holidays and stuff." And there's always like a give and take with everything. She's like, "I might have a clean house, but you get every holiday." And it's like just important to remember that, it's not all bad. And, you know, there's like a give and take to everything. A clean house doesn't always equal like you're super happy with every situation you're thrown into.
Oh my God. Amen, sister. That is so good. I'm sitting here just like thinking of all the scenarios and situations and circumstances in my head that could like be an analogy for. I'm thinking of
Yes.
even like, we're getting like so off tangent and we'll keep going on the podcast story here in a second. But like the last thing is
Yeah.
that that's such a good point is that like there is always a give and take and nothing is truly perfect even when it looks like it is on the outside. Like I'm thinking of relationships and you're, you know, like if you're fighting with your partner and you're just like wishing that you could leave them or something because you want to find something better out there. And it's like, you might find something better in those ways that it bothers you with the person that you're currently with, right? Like maybe you
Mhm.
find someone who doesn't have those current things that bother you about them,
Yes.
but they're gonna have something else. Like there is no such thing as someone out there that isn't gonna bring something to the table that irks you, right? It's just, and it's
Yes.
the same with like in motherhood and in life. Like
Yes.
you said, there's a give and there's a take, and we don't know the full story, and it's always going to be something. So it's like letting go and surrendering and stopping the comparison games and all that is like comes in really, really key.
Yes, 100%. Like it's, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
I know. We could have a whole episode just talking about that because it's so good and it's
Yes.
so true. And I just want to scream it from the rooftops for everybody.
Yes, me
Um,
too. Me too.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. We're so on the same page. Okay, well, let's move on. Let's have you
Yes.
share an overview of your birth. How did your birth go?
Well, like I said before, I did prepare for the best case scenario, and that did not happen. So, and this goes a little bit into like how pregnancy went too. So, I went to my 41-week appointment because I was a week late. And if you are late, you do have to have an ultrasound just to see how everything is going. And it turns out that my daughter had like stopped growing. So she was on the smaller side. So they were like, "We need to get her out. Like, we are past the point of waiting now for you to go into labor naturally," which like totally fine. They were like, "It's nothing like terrible. She just kind of like isn't gaining the weight we want her to gain." And everything was it. so I was like, all right, let's do it. I go in, I get induced, which is a wild ride by itself too. So then everything is kind of happening. The water breaks, things are going on, and then um, it's very painful. So I was like, please give me this epidural. Meanwhile, I was like, I could handle that pain. But I had the epidural. I actually didn't have the greatest reaction to it. I ended up I think it's called like bottoming out when your blood pressure drops really low after you get the epidural. So that
Mm-hmm.
happened. Her heart rate started dropping because of it. And then we kind of got her heart rate back up and my blood pressure back up. And then I immediately started you know, not having a great reaction. I was kind of throwing up everywhere. They were like, all right, emergency C-section time.
Oh man.
So, and of course, oh my God, my poor husband, I had just made him run out to get snacks because I had eaten all of our fruit snacks, which was my major craving during all this. And he comes in holding these Wegmans bags of fruit snacks. And they're like, all right, Dad, time to scrub up. And he's like, what?
You scrub up. Like, what are you talking about?
What is
Yeah.
happening?
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
So we go in for the emergency C-section, and oh my gosh, that could be a whole episode too of just
Yeah.
C-sections in general, which I feel like they don't tell you a lot about, but you feel way
Mm-hmm.
more than you think you're gonna feel, pressure wise and everything. So that's just my little tangent on that. But so because I wasn't feeling well from the epidural, and they have to pump full of more stuff so you don't feel anything. I had a little bit of a panic attack during it. After they got the baby out, she was fine, everything was fine, but I was I just had a panic attack that I couldn't breathe. I was I'm so thirsty, I can't breathe. I had really bad cotton mouth, and my husband tells this story really well. He's like, some nurse guy came up to me and was like, "Does your wife have panic attacks?" And he was like, "Yes, she does." And he's like, "The next thing I knew, they put something else in one of your IVs. You were knocked out, and they gave me the baby." And I was like, "Oh, oh," And he's like, "We went to another room. They rolled you in unconscious, and then we waited for you to wake up." And I was like, "Oh, oh,
Okay.
that's
That's nice.
great."
That's yeah. I'm thinking of everything you're explaining, and I'm just like, oh my God, this sounds awful. I would be. I mean, that sounds really terrifying.
It
Yeah,
was. It
just
was.
just thinking about having your whole abdomen cut open down to your uterus, like that.
Mm.
I feel like that in and of itself, they'd be wheeling me in, and I'd be like, I can't be conscious for this. Like, you need to knock me out now because I'm about to
I
walk off this table while I'm paralyzed. Like, I can't do
I
this.
wish they did. And you know what the crazier thing is? While they're doing it, they are having the most casual conversation, like
Oh my
what
God, I
they had for
bet.
lunch. And I was like, I'm just on the table, I'm being cut open right now, and they're talking about they ordered from Panera today. And I'm
Oh my
like,
God.
part of me had to be like, okay, this must be so routine for them that
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And I feel better about that, knowing that this surgery isn't something that needs
Right. It's a little comforting. Like,
yeah.
okay, they do this so much. Like, they're pros. Like, it's cool. On one hand, I feel like I'm a number because, like, they're just chatting about your lunch. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, maybe that's a good thing.
It was just so crazy. So it was
Yeah.
unbelievable. So I didn't get to hold my daughter right away, which I woke up and immediately they're like, let's try breastfeeding. And I'm like, okay. You're so out of it that you're just like, all right, let's do this, I guess.
Yeah.
And then things were pretty fine from there. So I can't complain too much, but it was a very wild ride from start to finish, I feel like.
Yeah. It sounds like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had prepared, just a little backstory. I had definitely prepared for an unmedicated natural birth. And that was my plan. And, you deviate from it, which I think is also why, one of my words is kind of at peace now because there's so much you cannot control. And she's here and she's healthy. And that is all that mattered at the time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you sounds like you have a very positive outlook and you've come a long way since then. 'Cause I mean, that is that as much as like you were both healthy, like it's
Mhm.
also okay to feel like that was traumatic or like that was not the birth experience you wanted and having to like
Yes.
mourn that because that's a big deal. And I think a lot of people women like kind of repress that, or they think if they weren't like, totally just like, treated, abused in the hospital
Mhm.
setting or something, that they're not allowed to have a traumatic birth experience or have felt like it was traumatic. Do you feel like you dealt with any of that?
Yes, a lot. I have had
Yeah.
a lot of friends who had, quote unquote, worse births than me. I have a lot of friends who have had worse situations. And
Mm,
so in my head for a long time, I felt very guilty that I was like, well, it wasn't that bad. I am okay now. She is okay now. Everybody's okay now. But then, I through like a lot of, deep diving people on social media, your birth trauma is your birth trauma. If it's something that you are upset about a week later, a month later, 5 months later, a year later, that's a birth trauma. And no matter what, if anyone had it worse than you, or you had it better than so many other people, it's still traumatic and you are allowed to feel that way. And it took a long time for me to admit that to myself and a long time to admit that to anybody else. And I just, if anybody gets anything out of this, like if you still feel upset about your birth, if you are still thinking about it and wishing you could have like gone back and done things differently, that is a trauma and that is something that you're allowed to feel no matter how bad anybody else had it.
yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that because, yeah, I see that commonly and it just like breaks my heart because it's not about like whose birth was worse, right? It's like you
Yes.
said, it's your own experience and that is valid. That is valid beyond any other. It doesn't matter who else had what, right? It's like what happened to you and how you perceived that. Is
Exactly.
what matters. Yeah.
And I feel like so many of us go in expecting the best because that's a lot that we're told and a lot that we're seeing in the media that, like, you know, your water breaks and you're wheeled in and it's like a 5 minute ordeal that you push really hard and everything comes out perfect. And it's okay to mourn that idea and it's okay to mourn that you didn't get the birth that you wanted to have. And it's okay to mourn, the moments that you probably like waited your whole pregnancy for that didn't happen. And I think that in itself is a trauma. The fact that you think like, oh, I'm gonna hold my baby right away, and like, I'm gonna have like this, picture perfect delivery, and if it doesn't go that way, like that in itself is a trauma. Like I've learned that no matter what, you're allowed to feel what you want to feel with it, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
trauma with birth, no matter what.
Agreed. 100% agreed. I think that birth in and of itself is kind of like a baseline trauma, to be honest. It's just such an
Agreed.
intense experience, even if you have a natural, physiologically normal vaginal birth and everyone's okay at the end of it. It's traumatic. Like it's so intense. I mean,
Oh
you're
yeah.
pushing a human out of your body. Like
Yes.
it's
With
crazy.
everybody watching, like you're
Yeah.
going through like this crazy, crazy thing. Like I agreed. Like no matter what, it is a huge trauma, and not that it isn't wonderful, but I feel like we're led to believe it's a lot easier than it is, no matter
Yeah.
what the scenario might be. Like I think we're just led to believe it's a very magical, I'm in touch with my body experience. In reality, it's messy and it's scary sometimes and it's painful and it's all over the place. And it's okay to like mourn that idea that you had.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think it's okay and good to acknowledge kind of these like truths about it. And I think a lot of times, it's kind of just painted over as like, oh, you can just breathe your baby out. And some people, some women do. Some women like don't experience pain or like their
Yes.
perception is way different than what mine was or a lot of the women I talk to. And that's, it's possible and it does happen, but it is rare. And so it's everyone experience is so different, but like what I've heard from most women that I've talked to, like it's a very intense emotional, like experience unlike any experience that they've ever had before in their life,
Oh,
which
agreed. Yeah. It's,
yeah.
and again, like I know people too who have like breathed through it and they took like a
Yeah.
bath. And I just like remember before I got the epidural, I was like, there is no way breathing in a bath is going to make this feel any better. Like, so I give all the credit in the world to those women because, like,
Yeah.
Was not me.
They're amazing. I know. I thought I was gonna be one for sure. I was
Yes.
like, I got this. Like this, I've wanted this my whole life. Like
Hmm.
this is feels like what I was made for. And then
Yes.
here, there I am in the moment, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, how
Yes.
do women do this? I was shocked. I felt like I was sucker punched in the throat. Like I was like,
Yes.
I did not expect any of what my birth was like. And it was
Agreed.
normal and physiological and vaginal and nothing happened that was wrong. And I still was like, what in the actual fuck? Like, I'm never doing that again. Not to
Yes.
scare anybody. I hope
No.
that we're not scaring anyone out there. This is just our experience, right? This was just
Yes.
this is our story, your story. So, yeah, not to
I
scare
will say
anyone
though
because
too, if anyone is worried, like you will get through it. You will like kind of
100%.
instinctively know how to protect yourself no matter what, and you'll know
Yeah.
what's best in the moment for you. And I think I kind of wish like that was said instead of like, oh, your body knows what to do. I'm like, mine did not. Mine did not know, no, like not at all know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. I love what you just said. Like, because after my birth too, I was trying to process and be like, okay, what could I have done differently? Because I felt like I prepared so much and yet I still felt sucker punched and blindsided. So, like, what could I have done differently? Right. But it's that right there, what you just
Yeah.
said. I wish someone would have told me something like, you know what? This is going to be them. I'm not going to bullshit you. Like, this is going to be the most intense, probably most painful thing you'll ever do in your life, but you will do it and you can do it and you will get through it because eventually it does end and eventually you will have your baby afterwards and
Yes.
like you'll be fine.
Yes.
Versus like, oh, like, I took like a hypnobirthing class and they teach you to like, just imagine that you're
Yes.
somewhere else and do these visualizations and like breathe your baby out. And that's great if that works for you. But
Yes.
in the moment, that shit did not work for me. I'm just gonna,
Same. Same.
but
And
enough about me.
yes.
I want to get back to Jackie, but I love this. I love what you said. Like that's that right there. I think is the golden
Mhm.
ticket. Like the
Yes.
truth about it, but then also the other half of the truth, which is a little bit more like enlightening and hopeful, is that you will get through it and it does end.
Yes, you will get through it. It does end. And, honestly, like no one is a failure no matter like what route they had to take to get the baby out. Like, a healthy baby is a healthy baby. And no matter the route it got here. Because I feel like, again, too, like even the natural way, like I feel like everyone is like, oh, if you don't do that, like you took the easy way out. I'm like, C-sections are not the easy way out.
Mm-mm. No, no, no. I cannot imagine that major abdominal surgery would be the easy way out.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Yeah. That's great. There's too many, like, it's
Oh.
so black and white. Like,
Mhm.
super crunchy, like home births are the only way to go, or like, absolutely no, I have to be in the hospital with my epidural. There's so much
Yes.
gray area. And like you said, like, it's still birth. It doesn't matter if it was via C-section or like natural at home or anything in between. Like, you
Yes.
still are a mother who has given birth to their child.
Yes.
That is amazing, right? Like
Yes.
you freaking did it.
Yeah, because like and everyone's story is so different too. And like the more women I talk to, the more I'm like, you're a superhero. You are amazing because like nobody's birth story is the same either. Like everyone had such a different experience. And I think it's like really important to honor that about like every mom out there too, that like their experience is unique to them. And like no matter how it went, you're allowed to feel the way you felt about it. You got through it. You did it. You're here. You are a superhero.
Yeah. And that goes for you too, Jackie. You're a superhero.
Thank
You
you.
went through this crazy C-section. That's honestly one of my biggest fears, I think, is like having to have a C-section. And then I talk to these amazing women who've gone through it and like come out the other side. And I'm like, that's how I feel too. Like you're a hero. Like I think, I mean, all moms are, but it's intense. So you got wheeled to that room. They knocked you out, luckily, because you were not doing
Yeah.
too hot. Like I
Yeah.
would not be either. And then you got thrown into breastfeeding. How did
Yes.
breastfeeding go? And
Um,
how long were you there? And what happened when you went home and all that good stuff?
so breastfeeding went well in the hospital. I switched to pumping the first night because, it's very different when you don't have like the doctors there to kind of like help you with everything. So pumping was my journey and it's totally fine. And I have made peace with it because again, I think like breastfeeding versus not breastfeeding is like a whole other thing. But
Yep.
at the hospital, I stayed the full 3 days and I'm so happy I did. And I urge everyone, if this is your first time, to stay the full time because my blood pressure and the post-eclampsia didn't start until the night of day 2. and they were trying to like get us out day 2 in the morning. And I was like, no, we're gonna stay the 3 days. Like, I just want to make sure everything's right. Like, I just want to, you know, kind of like, cross all my boxes and just make sure everything is right. And I'm so happy I did because otherwise it could have been a very different outcome for me.
Yeah, I'm sounds like you had some intuition there and you listened, so I'm so glad you did that.
And it's just like crazy too. Like, I'm so happy I did. Like, something I think just like out of body almost was like, stay.
Yeah, yeah. So you stayed the 3
Yes.
and then you got discharged
hmm
and then how did those first like 2 weeks go?
Oh, the first 2 weeks. So, because of the post-eclampsia, I was on bed rest my first month, which bed rest with a newborn isn't like a real thing. So, um, so the first 2 weeks were a little hard, especially because, my husband was back at work. Like, we kind of agreed that like I would do my maternity leave, then he would do his. And since she was already late, it was like the first week of school. So he had to go into work because he's also a teacher.
Mm.
So the first 2 weeks were a little nutty. And of course, like I was going through the post-eclampsia. And of course, that's the time everyone wants to come visit is like the first 2 weeks. So it was just like a lot. I felt very overwhelmed, very stressed. Um, and in general, too, because of the C-section, they don't like tell you how to heal from it. Just that, like, you have this thing and to not lift more than X amount of weight and to not move strenuously, which a lot of the pain with it kind of took me by surprise with just like moving around and having to carry a newborn and like, just kind of like situate yourself for everything. So I feel like the first 2 weeks were just really survival mode and just kind of trying to get through everything. Luckily, like my family was around and like they were very, very supportive and helpful with stuff. So, you know, I'm very lucky there because I know a lot of people don't have that. But it was just, kind of on a little overwhelming, I will say.
Yeah. Yeah, that big I remember I'm thinking back and like yeah, those first like few weeks
Yeah.
were really hard. I'm so glad you had some people around you for support
Yes.
because that I mean mamas need support. Like
Yes.
the whole it takes a village thing, right? Like
Oh my
I've kind of changed my mindset from it takes a village to raise a baby to it takes a village to support a mom so she can raise a baby. Like,
Yes.
because really that is what we need, right? Like
Oh,
we need the
100%.
support so that then we can, like, we're perfectly capable of raising our own children, but like we need help,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, especially like
Yeah.
the first few weeks. And like some moms are like super moms, I'm telling you, and they just like hop right into it. And like it is also very okay if that was not you. Because like things do happen and it is way harder than you think. Like, this is your first time ever doing something like this, and you don't know what insanely sleep deprived you is like. You don't know what in pain you is like. You don't know what like all of that on top of like taking care of a newborn who is essentially helpless in your home setting with everything else going on too. It's just it can be a lot, and I completely agree with what you said. It takes a village to like help a mom. And I honestly, and I've I've said this to my husband so many times, that I wish you could pick a person in your life that could also take the first 6 or 8 weeks off with you for like disability or like maternity leave or something, like aside from the paternity leave and everything, because
Yeah.
you just need some help too. Or even if it's like 2 or 3 weeks or something, just someone there with you to be like, hey, I got this for you. You can lay down, you can rest, you can do this, because I think we all need it.
Oh yeah, that would be basically if a postpartum doula was like included with your insurance and your after, your postpartum care.
Which it
Like
should be.
how amazing would that be? It should be. And it's sad for us to sit here thinking about how amazing it would be when it should really just be like standard of practice. Or at least
Yes,
someone to come check on you at least a couple of times a week for the next few weeks, right? Because like,
yes, or even just like a telehealth thing too, to be like, what are you experiencing right now? What are you, feeling? What do you need help with? Here are some resources.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
like it's just really crazy. And I feel like at your 6 week appointment, they're just like, here's 5 questions about depression and anxiety. Like, better answer them right. But if you don't, you're not going to get any resources on how to seek help afterward. And yeah, and like you said before, like, by the way, like, you can have sex now and exercise. And I'm like, those things are the furthest from my mind. Like,
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're like, I actually really just maybe want to like talk to a therapist and have someone come help me like cook dinner and do my laundry. That would be great.
yes.
Maybe let me take a nap, like
Yes,
a
someone needs to
shower.
come over and be like, "You're fine. You're okay." Like, even just like a hype person to come over and be like, "You're doing a good job." Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Amen to all of that. That's hopefully one day. That would be amazing.
oh yeah,
Um,
I again, like, I tell my husband all the time, like, I want to quit teaching just to like change how maternity leave is in America, because I'm like so upset with how women are just, thrown into this without a lot of warning about things. And, they're like, put a smile on, lose the weight right away, and also be like super grateful for everything and raise like the smartest, healthiest baby ever. And you're like, I don't know. Okay. Like,
yeah. 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 This is why I'm creating a postpartum course that I want to hopefully market and sell to women who are
yes,
pregnant or postpartum that just helps them line all these things up, helps them set up support, helps them eat better so they can
yes,
feel more energized. And, I'd love to start taking clients one on one in that arena as well and just helping women. Cause like after I went through it, I was like,
yes,
like, no, no, this is not acceptable. Like, I feel like I can help. So how can I help? And this is like
yes.
how I'm trying to help the podcast and seeing
I
women,
think
creating courses.
that's an amazing idea. I think honestly it would help so many women just to be like having almost like a checklist to be like, "Oh, I need to make, like, before I even deliver, like X amount of meals and have them in the freezer," or like, you know, if I can't do this, here's like a support system with that, and like here's a like you just kind
Exactly.
of feel like so helpless with it, because even the packets they give you at the end, they're not like helpful. They're just kind of like what every baby book says. Like,
Yeah.
if they're not doing like a like, it's all about the baby. I feel like
Yeah, and it's all
everything,
about the baby. Yeah, exactly.
which like it should be, because like as a new mom too, it's like a lot of this stuff you're just like, is this normal? But
Yeah,
but
right.
it's also you, like, you're going through a crazy like physical and emotional change and
Yeah,
hormonal and like everything that, you know, a lot of people just need like a lifeline and
yeah, exactly.
resources, and it's severely lacking.
Yeah. Yep. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like how feeding went, healing, sleeping, if you
Oh,
want to share,
oh
and
my
then we can
God.
move on
Sorry,
like
yeah,
to
no,
how you're doing now.
so, since I had the C-section, I couldn't go upstairs and I was on bed rest. And of course, like, her whole nursery and our bedroom is upstairs.
Right.
So that was also another thing I did not prepare for. So we had to get the bassinet downstairs, set up kind of like a second bedroom on the couch. So I actually slept on the couch. And of course, too, like, to add to the stress, we moved into our like now house like 2 months postpartum. So that was, I don't recommend
Oh
it.
my gosh. Oh my gosh, Jackie.
Uh, I know
Moving,
it's
moving is like if you like look it up, like moving is like one of the most stressful things that humans
yes.
do, right? And traveling and like,
Oh my
there's like a
God.
list of really stressful things. Of course,
Yes.
that's one of them. Yeah.
Oh my God. So I don't
Timing.
recommend it, especially like, and like, I'm now being on the other side, like I said, I'm very humbled by the whole experience and like very at peace with a lot of stuff. But like in the heat of the moment, I was struggling. It was not good. But yeah, so like sleeping, especially with her, my husband and I actually had like a pretty good routine at first. We would like study her sleep patterns. Um, Probably like the science teacher and me coming out with all of this, I'd be like, I have like a chart that was like, all right, so she slept for like 3 hours, and this time she slept for like 4 hours and everything. So I used that to kind of make like, I didn't like sleep train, but I like kind of studied her cues and like would kind of wake her up after 3 hours for a feeding, which I did do, all pumping for the first 3 months, which was also like a whole, I think that there needs to be like another resource on that too, like because I definitely did things that I like regret now looking back because you don't make a lot of milk at first. And I just remember being like, oh, I gotta get my supply up. And of course, like we're at the age now too where like we have too much information. So I did that, and then I overproduced and like mastitis and clogged ducts, which are awful. And I just kind of wish that like someone had kind of been like, hey, it's okay not to have a lot of milk. Like you can also supplement with formula. Because I think I gripped that really tight that like it could only be breast milk for a while. And I really wish I had not done that because I think like it was just a really big mind game and mental like hurdle to get over on top of everything else. So that I mean, I if I were to do it again, I probably would pump again, but definitely supplement with formula, which is totally fine and makes a healthy baby too. And I think, we're kind of sold this idea that like breast is best. And I give so much
Hmm.
credit to the women who do breastfeed and breastfeed for the whole year and like everything else like that because it's amazing, but it also like it's not a reality for a lot of women and that is okay too.
Yep.
So,
I'm glad you said that because it's 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 a really easy guilt trap to fall into as a new mom, especially when, of course, all you want is to do what's best for your
yes.
baby, right? At
Yes.
the sacrifice of what might be best for you. But if you're not at your best or you're not well, like
Yeah.
then it does nothing matters because you're their mother. Like you
Yes.
have to be well to take care of them, and that was a huge thing for me too. So I feel your struggle because it is hard, and breastfeeding is amazing. And if it
Yes.
works well for you, please do it for as long as it
Yeah.
works for you. But if not, formula is
Yes.
great too. Like it works, it keeps babies healthy, and it's amazing. It saves lives. So
Yes. I love what you said.
don't fear it.
Yes, yes, don't fear it. And I love what you said too. If it's not working for you, like you have to take
Yeah.
care of you first. And I think like especially as a new mom, you get into like this kind of mindset that you're like, you know, nothing about me matters anymore because that's almost how like society makes you feel. But like you need to do what's best for you mentally as well as physically. And if breastfeeding is causing you so much stress and heartache and pumping is as well, like I remember before quitting, I had a clogged duct, I think, every day for 2 weeks. And it was so painful. And every time I had to pump, I just remember crying on the couch and my husband being like, I think you just need to stop. Like, I think we need to go to formula. And I was like, no, like, I was going to do this for the first 6 months. And he's just like, it's not working. You're not happy. Like, I think it's time to stop. And it was almost like such I guess like a godsend to hear him kind of step into and be like, "You're not happy. Please stop." Like, I want to see you happy. I want to see you be a good mother. I want to see you be a happy mother, and this is not the way. And so, just like even to having somebody, a friend, a partner, step in and be like, "No, you're not happy. Like, change gears." Like, is okay. And sometimes we
Yeah.
need to hear it.
Oh my God. I'm like legitimately almost just started crying because I was like getting flashbacks to my husband and my mom. I was in the kitchen and I was pouring tears because of the
Mhm.
physical pain I was
Yes.
about to endure to pump again
Mhm.
and to barely get any milk too because I had like low milk supply issues and
Yes.
whatever, all of the things. And they both looked at me and it's like, like
Mhm.
5:30 in the morning too.
Yes.
And they're like,
Always.
Natalie, like, just stop.
Yeah.
Like, just stop. And I could not accept it. I thought it was like going to be, you know, harming my child or like I was
Yes.
going to be a failure of a mom if I gave up and quit because I'm in a little bit of pain. Well, it was a lot of pain actually, but
Yes.
like physical pain, mental pain.
Yes.
No, it's not worth it. Like for what? For
For what?
what? Would like, to what end, right? So it's yeah,
Exactly.
we
Like
had
if it
very
is,
similar
yes, and it's hard.
emotional experiences with
Yes.
that, I think. Yeah.
It's really hard. I think like almost more than anything else, if I were to have another kid, that is something I'm probably more traumatized by than like the whole getting her into the world story. Like because it's
Yeah.
such a pressure on moms to like breastfeed and sometimes like when it doesn't work out you just are like what is wrong with my body, like why can't I do this, was I meant to be a mom, was and I just remember going through that so many times and being like oh, great. Like, I couldn't even do a natural birth, and now I can't do breastfeeding, and now I can't do pumping. And it just like, it takes such a mental toll on you sometimes that you're like, at least it did for me. And it's okay. Like, to everyone listening, it's okay. No matter how they got here, if you breastfeed, if you pump, if you formula feed, a- anything that makes the load lighter on you and you happiest is what you should be doing.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so good. Because we live in different times, and I think we might, like, we're still trapped in this thinking of like we have to do it all, but like we
Yeah.
were never meant to do it all, and no one's ever done it all. And the ones who do it all and look like they've got it all together,
Hmm.
they're faking it. Like,
Yes.
like it's even like back in the day, like little tribes of women came together to help a single mom,
Yes.
like their aunts and their grandmothers and their sisters and their cousins all came together into that household to support her so that she could then take care of her baby. And that is not the case today in
No.
2023. It's not going to be the case in 2024 or 2030. Like, we just live in such a different world, and we put
Yes.
so much pressure on ourselves to do everything and to bounce back and to just get straight back to the grocery store, go straight back to doing what we were doing before,
Hmm.
go back to work and just grind and hustle. But
Hmm.
that is not, who is that serving?
Nobody.
Society at large? Screw
Maybe.
them,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, maybe,
Right.
not really, because like I mean,
No,
we have
I
to
just
like,
like yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I don't think we were meant to do it all. And you know what? The women who are and, are doing it all, like, I'm so happy for them. I do not know how they do it with like a smile on their face because, like, it's so much. It is so much, especially if you're like a working mom too, or even like a stay-at-home mom. It's just like not how it used to be. And I think like we need to update a lot of the maternity leave laws, or like things you can do on it, and really update like resources and support and everything because times have changed and like I don't feel like much else has.
right, yeah, it does. We are coming to this like culmination. I think collectively a lot of women are kind of waking up and realizing these things, right? And we're talking about it and we're getting the message out there and we're trying to change the narrative, and it's taking a long time and it's probably going to take longer, but
Hmm.
I hope that you're right, and that is what we need. And hopefully it's a matter of time, and eventually other countries are doing it, right?
Yes.
Like, there's
Yes.
other European countries that they have this stuff built into their healthcare system. It is 100% covered. It's 100%
Yeah.
promised. They have people that come to their home, midwives, whoever it is, and help you. And if you don't need any help with like baby, they will like cook you a meal. They will
Yeah.
like clean your house. Like, they just come to support you in whatever way that you need, because they realize that that is a need for
Yes.
the health of mom and baby, and therefore that is health care, right? Like,
Yes.
that is a part of health care.
Oh, agreed. Like yeah, agreed. You said it great. Like I'm just thinking here like, yes, like I need
We
this.
agree on everything, I think. We totally agree that there needs to be change.
Yes. Oh my gosh, 100%, 100%. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's just bad. Like it's just bad right now, especially like, and I can only speak to like working moms and stuff, but like it's so much. And at the end of the day too, I just feel like you're just not allowed to have like a bad day at work because you have to come home and put a smile on for your kid and like get dinner ready and like do all this stuff, and then it's like, you know how like
Yeah, when you feel like you've got nothing left to give, like, how do you continue to keep showing up? Like, eventually you have to, like, something's got to change, right? Like,
yes.
something's got to
Oh,
got to
100.
move over, or you gotta, like, you're just gonna break eventually,
Yes.
without that support system in place. And it's
Yeah.
not naturally built in for us, so we have to create it on
Yeah.
our own. Yeah.
Agreed.
So I just want to ask you a couple more things about, like, up until your postpartum.
Yes.
How did your maternity? You kind of talked a little bit about maternity leave. Like, when did you go back, and then, how did that go? And then,
Yes.
I'll ask you if you want any more children.
Okay. So I took about 3 months off for maternity leave. Luckily, in New Jersey is one of the few states that like you get maternity leave. So also, if any teachers are listening, you have to pay separately for disability, um, which I highly recommend you do because disability is not included in any teaching thing in any state, I don't think. So I got the first 4 weeks before I had my daughter and the 8 weeks after I had her paid for by disability. And then, which also is like a whole other thing, like why is birth a disability? But I could go on about that one too. But um, to all teachers listening, please make sure you are paying extra for disability because you do get paid a little bit more with that. And you do get more time. So in New Jersey too, we also get family leave. So I got 12 weeks after that of family leave. So I was really lucky to get about 3.5 months off, which is nowhere near enough time either. So, and I have friends who I work with who didn't work at this school long enough to get family leave, so they had to go back, and they didn't have disability either, so they went back 2 weeks after they had their baby, and I'm just like, how? And they're like,
Yeah,
well,
that's
I have to pay the bills, and it's a horrible system.
oh my
It's a
God.
horrible, horrible system, and I feel like it is, especially as a teacher, like figuring out all the loopholes and the ways to get paid the most and to get the most time off. It's like I feel like I had to go through like I felt like I was in almost like a sci-fi movie with like riddles being like, "Oh, you figured out this step and now go to like the third door on the left to find whatever lady works there and ask her this." Like it
Yeah.
was it was unreal, and I just remember being like, there needs to be a better way for that, for one. But also just returning back to work, like even after 3 months, I was not ready mentally, physically, like you know. And as like a high school teacher too, I remember like I had to put like the nursing pads in my bra, and so I wouldn't leak. And I was just like, on my breaks, I was hysterically crying in my room in the back, and I was just like, you know, I have nowhere to pump. I have nowhere to do this. Like, I can't imagine moms who, are forced out of breastfeeding and have to pump to go back to work. And like, it was just so much. Like, and, you know, I didn't bounce back at all. So I was like still in my maternity clothes. Like, I just felt like so out of like touch with everything. And it's kind of funny now going back, because a lot of my coworkers, especially people who started last year and only met me postpartum, this year they're like, "You weren't ready to come back." And I was like, "No, no, I was not." And they're like, "You are a different person now." And I was like, "Yeah, no, like I'll tell everybody, like that first year postpartum, I was not a real person until maybe 10 months. And that's like when I finally started feeling a little bit normal. So it was going back to work was really bad. So if anyone's listening and you're going back to work and like you're struggling, it's very normal. And I think it's like there has to be something better out there for that because it's just crazy. Like I feel like it's just crazy. And then you
Yeah.
come home and you're like, exhausted from work, but I'm telling you, I could do a whole like 500-page book on this. Like,
I hope you do because I will buy it and read it and be like,
yeah.
mm-hmm, the whole time. Like, yep, yep.
It's
We
like,
need we need more. We need to get that out there more.
yes.
That like this like it's not you. Like you're not the issue. Like the
Mhm.
woman showing up to work and being like hysterically crying and mourning the fact that she has to stop breastfeeding and now she has to pump or she has to quit pumping because she has to pump in the bathroom and she doesn't want to pump in the bathroom
Yes.
because she has nowhere else to pump. Like that's not okay. That is
No.
not a you problem, right? Like that
Yes.
is a bigger systemic
This
problem that
is
has
like
nothing
a
to do with
whole,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
This is like a system problem to its
Yeah.
core. And I
Mm-hmm.
just remember too, like, because she's at daycare 2 days a week and like with my mother-in-law a few days a week and then with my mom. And my parents and my husband's parents like don't know how to use their phone well. So here I am like hoping, with postpartum anxiety too, like hoping for a picture or an update. So I'm calling them on my lunch break like crying again, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like send me a picture of my daughter. Like please let me know she's okay." But
Yeah.
it's hard too because it's also like you have so many plans for how you want to raise your kid. And you do get time after work and you do get weekends and stuff, but so much other stuff comes up. And sometimes, like, it still gets to me to this day that, you know, when I'm having a hard day and stuff, like, I'll break down crying and be like, it's not fair that, like, my mother in law is raising my daughter more than I am some days. And, like, it hurts and it's sucky. And there needs to be something better, I think, out
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
like some solution.
Yeah. There is. It's just like putting it all together and changing a whole system that's been in
Yes.
place and that is like,
Hmm.
dictated by
Yeah.
political affiliations and
Mhm.
money. It's like, it's just so hard to
It is.
change
It's so
that.
hard. Yes. And also it's like I feel like the mental load too, especially for women, because we're sold this story a lot that like you should be a career woman. Women who excel in careers are like happiest as mothers, and like you should have another hobby outside of being a mom, and you should, you know, have something else that fills your cup. And then, I bought into that lie, or maybe it's not a lie for some people, but I bought into that story for a long time. And I spent so much of my life getting degrees in education, getting degrees in science, and then I had her, and the day I went back to work, I was like, I don't care at all about this anymore. Like none of that matters. I could have not like I could have done all this and like none like it doesn't matter at all. So now it's like kind of picking up the pieces and figuring out like do I actually care about my job anymore? Should I make a pivot? But then it's like I spent most of my life working at this career and working towards this career, and it's just I think like that's a lot of like mental guilt too that a lot of women face, especially when we buy into this story that I don't think is talked about a lot either. Is that, you're allowed to change your mind, you're allowed to career switch, you're allowed to not be fulfilled at work anymore, and it's okay.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that is also such a good point, and also kind of like metaphorically equivalent to just the transition of motherhood and like changing your whole perspective and your whole identity.
Hmm.
That can kind of filter over into other areas of
Oh,
what like
yeah.
who am I? You have this almost opportunity if you kind of like look at it in that way, right? Of like
Yes.
you can kind of recreate who you are
Hmm.
because you're forced to in this really big way of becoming a mom, but you can also kind of be like, well, what do I even like? Like, what even makes me tick anymore? I can
Oh, yeah.
choose new hobbies and I can quit my job and I can figure
Mhm.
something else out. Or, like you said, career pivot. Like, do you even enjoy
Yeah.
what you're doing? Like, all this time, all these hours, every single day, every single week that you're spending doing
Yes.
this one thing, like,
Hmm.
you might not have ever stopped and really thought about it before until you were kind of forced to in this
Exactly.
role.
Yes, and like my mom was like a career woman to her core, and I remember like the month after I went back to work, I like broke down. I was hysterically crying in my car on the way home from work, just being like, "How did you do this? Like, how did you do it?" And she was like, "I didn't have a choice," and she didn't at the time, and she was making like had a great career and everything. But she's like, "You have a choice." She's like, "You could do a lot with your degree." It was like but I just remember being like, why did you emphasize career so much? Like, and I was like, I can't do it. And it was really hard. And things have gotten better now. And I promise to everyone out there who is struggling, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just, you do realize you're a new person though. And you realize, like, I don't need to stay late at work. I don't need to put in this extra mile. Like, my salary's not changing based off that. Like, you know, I go in, I do my job, I leave, and that is that. And like as a mom now too, like I used to, as a teacher, be so enthusiastic about so many lessons and activities, and now I'm just kind of like, here's a worksheet. Like I can't afford to put all of my energy into these kids today because I need to go home and put energy into hanging out with my daughter and making memories with her. And that's
Yeah.
okay too.
Yeah. I mean, totally, totally. Like you have to kind of reassess what your priorities are, and after you become a mom, like your priorities are gonna of course change. And I feel like there's some people that don't understand that, usually people that don't have kids themselves yet, or like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that and I was one of those people before I had
Oh,
kids. I was
same.
so quick to judge like other moms out in
Same.
public that I would see them how they were reacting to their kids' behavior, or like I don't know, just every little random thing. I'd be like, "Oh
Yes.
my God, I would never do that," or "Oh my God, I can't believe they're doing that." And then now I'm like, "Oh my God, I would totally do that."
Yes.
Like leashes, for example, like in a crowded place.
Yes.
I was like, "Why would you put your kid on a leash? They're not a dog. Don't have a kid if you're gonna put them on a leash." And now I'm like, "I'm sorry, but I would 100% put my daughter on a
Yes.
freaking leash in a crowded place." Like,
Oh my God, it's so funny. Before you have kids, you're always the perfect parent. And you're like,
yep.
I remember too, like, I texted one of my friends, like, going back to work and stuff, and I was like, why didn't you tell me how it was? Like, I was like, I'm so embarrassed for like things I said or didn't help with or didn't say or didn't do. And she's like, honestly, no one knows until they know. So it's like to every new mom out there who's like mortified, like I was, that you treated some of your mom friends the way you did and didn't call or help out enough. Like, we all get it. We don't know till we know. Like,
Yeah,
it's,
exactly. You just got to go through it. It's kind of like
uh,
preparing for postpartum. Like,
yeah,
yes, there is a lot that you can prepare for, and it can really help to set things up.
yeah.
But you kind of have to take each day as it comes, and like each,
Yes.
challenge as it comes, and kind of be flexible and adaptable when that comes up, because
Yeah.
you really don't know until you're going through it. And everyone's experience is going to be different, like we've said
Yes.
throughout this entire podcast. So,
Yes, and I think
yeah.
like one big thing with that too, like I said with the words before, is like you need to find peace with the messy and the not having control, and that like your kid is not going to fit every mold, and it's not going to be like your friends' kids, and they're your own kids, and being okay with that and not like hyper fixating on everything is a better path.
That's so true and so good. It's so easy to forget that too and be like, "Oh my God, they're not saying, 10 words at this age yet, or
Oh,
they're not doing this at this point, or they're not like
right.
eating that much. Like, is our other kids eating that much? Like, they
Mm.
only took one bite of their dinner. Like, oh my God, they're so many things, right? That we're like, are always, is this right? Is this normal? Is this adequate? Is this enough? Like, is
Yes.
something wrong?"
Oh my God. I went through that actually recently. Like I had a step back and I was like, because our daughter's not walking yet. She like, we'll take a few steps. She's no interest in it right now. And I I actually like cried to her daycare teacher. I was like almost in tears talking to her. I was like, is everything okay? Like, do I need to do early intervention? She's like, she's fine. She's like exactly where she needs to be. Some kids walk early. And of course, they're always going to be your friends' kids. And like, so don't worry. Like it's you just gotta have like peace that, and trust too that you'll know if something is truly wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good point too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, last thing I want to ask you is, do you want any more children? And if so, how do you know?
So I do. I do. I think a lot of it though comes from that I grew up most of my life as an only child. My half brother and I are 13 years apart. And then I got step siblings when I was in high school. And I just like remember always wanting like a sibling and always wanting a built-in friend almost, which I know is not always the case. But I don't think we're done. And it's just like it's a feeling inside. And
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to a few of like my cousins and everything who have multiples, have one, and they were just always kind of like, you just know. Like it's a feeling you have, and don't do it until like you're ready. And, you know, they're just like, you just kind of have this feeling deep down that you're like not done yet. And now being on the outside of a lot of things and, having a lot of peace with what happened, I think we probably will start trying again pretty soon. So, you know, I'm excited about it. I'm
Yeah.
hoping being having like so many weird things happen that like this go around will be a little smoother. But even if it's not, you know, I would be happy to try again.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. You will, like, I, at least I believe that,
Mhm.
and I've been told as well that it is kind of just like annoying because we're in
Yes.
a similar place where we're like, I feel like I want another, like I always
Mhm.
saw myself with more than one,
Yes.
but I'm still in this place of like, I don't know if I can go back and like start all of that over again. So it's, yeah, it's just, it's a hard decision. It's a very personal decision. And hopefully I'll just wake up one day and be like, I know for sure. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah, like it's a very personal decision. Like so many of my friends were like doing the two under two thing and you know, as a mom you kind of like calculate sometimes like if I, conceive at
hmm
this date I'll deliver here.
I literally have, I have like a list.
Oh yeah. That's perfect. I do. I actually have one saved on my Pinterest board that I'm like, I go back to. I'm like,
Yeah. Like,
it's so funny how your brain works like that. That like when
yeah.
you're a mom. But um, I was like, okay, so we should get pregnant because she was born in August, so she turned one in August. And I was like, let's try in July and August. And I said this in like March last year or something. And July and August came and I was like, I'm just not ready. Like I'm
Yeah.
not ready physically, I'm not ready emotionally, I'm not ready mentally. And there's like a big part of me too, because I've talked to a few friends of mine who have kids around the same age, and they're just kind of like, I don't want this chapter to end with just them quite yet. And I think that's like a good way to kind of like gauge, like, I don't want this chapter with her to just end quite yet, but I'm also like at a point right now where I'm almost ready for the next chapter to see her as like a sister.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I love both of the, I love the like, you're not ready for it. Cause I've thought that way too
Yeah.
of like, I love just having her right now and kind of
Yes.
being able to like spoil her and all of our time is spent with her and she doesn't have to share it. But I'm also to that point where I'm like, but she would make such a good sister and it would just like, how amazing and rewarding and like warm and cozy it would be to see her, like step into that role
Mhm.
as an older sibling. I just think that there's something really special about that, right? And if it's something that you want for your family, it will be really
Exactly.
special.
And I think like, and I think and I think one thing that a lot of people have said to me, and I believe it very much so, is that like you have to stand firm in knowing that you know. Like if you know you're done, that is okay. And you don't have to explain that to anybody. And if you know you're not done, you also don't have to explain that to anybody. Like you just have to, yeah, but like I very much feel like the next chapter is starting to creep in a little bit, at least in my mind, to be like,
Hmm.
she understands things now. Like, she is really good with other kids. She, like, has a lot of love to give. I think, like, the next chapter, I'm excited for it to start coming sooner. So that's, like, kind of just where I am mentally. And who knows, things could change tomorrow. But
Literally, like in the next hour.
right? Like I'll go upstairs and the house is like probably destroyed with like the dog and her, and I'm gonna be like, nope, never mind.
Nope,
That's
100% no. It's the same for me.
how
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
me too.
Well, it's so good to talk to you today, Jackie. Are there any resources that you want to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
I would say if you feel like you are going through anxiety or postpartum depression, what really helped me, and like, this sounds so silly, but I found little journals on Amazon for anxiety and depression postpartum. And honestly, putting aside like a half hour a day just to journal and get everything out and to be like, oh my God, I got to like stuff out instead of holding it all in was a huge part of my healing journey. I think also just finding your people online, like finding like other resources online that fit how you're feeling was a huge lifesaver for me because like I said before, I was following all these like, moms who were making it look perfect and oh my God, there's like one influencer I was following at the time who had her third kid unmedicated birth, like it was perfect. She's like, read these affirmations, it'll help you get through it. And I had to unfollow her because I was like, I can't listen to this anymore because it's so not what I'm going through. And like more power to her. She's so happy. She's probably an amazing woman. but it just like wasn't my story or my journey. And I think like finding your people online is a huge thing, and just finding people who went through what you went through, like being open about your story. You don't have to always say it's like perfect, because other people probably have the same story. And I actually became very, very close friends with a girl at work who I had no idea went through like almost an identical story to mine. And her and I guess maybe we trauma bonded a little bit, but like, you kind of have to sometimes. And if I had kept all that in and, didn't speak about it, her and I would never be friends, and I would never have probably gotten over some of the things I got over. But like finding your people, I think is the best thing you can do. And however you do that, I think is like, I mean, I don't want to give like specific resources because I know everyone's story is different, but I think just finding your people is like the biggest help you can get.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. It's so healing and supportive, and that's
Yes.
really what we need in this time in our
Yes.
life. So I love that.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And then where can the listeners find you if they want to reach out to you, get to know you a little bit more?
You can always find me on Instagram. My username is Jackie Fit Fox Teach. I think there's like a period between every word. So Jackie period Fit period Fox period Teach.
Perfect. And I'll link all that in the show notes.
Okay.
So if anyone
Yay.
wants to reach out to you and find you, they can.
Yay.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Jackie. I
Thank
really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. I
you.
loved hearing your story, and I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me to come on. I really had a great time.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at the.moms.nutritionist and subscribe to this channel to be notified of each new episode. And if you'd like to support the podcast even further, please like this video and share it with a friend or anyone who could benefit from watching. This helps get the word out there, which helps moms heal and thrive.